Bob Iger really is passing the blame, and it's a tough thing to do when he was also there the entire time. Bob Iger was still at this company. He was still on the board. He was still in his office. It's not like he like walked out the door and didn't have anything to do with any of the decision making. He was there when Bob Chapek took over. He handpicked Bob Chapek. He was always supposed to be used as a fall guy. I think we all understand that. And still, Bob Iger is blaming all the failures that they had this year directly back on Bob Chapek. Bob Iger criticizes Disney's moves under Chapek. I was disappointed in what I was seeing. You were pretty up close and personal to what you were seeing because you were still at the company.
That's right.
I was disappointed in what I was seeing in the transition period and while I was out. I worked hard at distancing myself from it, he says. And pretty much everything ends up getting blamed somehow back on Bob Chapek. There's a big statement going around about Bob Iger talking about movies need to be about entertainment, not about messaging. God, have you been watching our YouTube channels, Bob Iger? Like,
exactly.
Holy shit. Like, obviously, that is true. And he did go on to say, you can still tell powerful stories, but at the heart, everything needs to be about entertainment. And we really lost track of that during Bob Chapek's tenure. No, bitch, you are the one who has instituted all of these policies. Like going forward, when you look at all the stuff that was coming out of Disney, whether it was the not so secret gay agenda, whether you look at the critical race theory stuff, all these activists were put in power while Bob Iger was there. The idea that he's trying to blame that on Chapek is laughable. Look at what he said about Marvel. This to me was a pretty powerful statement. You know, all these YouTubers that said, hey, I think there's a problem with Marvel. I think there's a problem with Marvel. This isn't good. This isn't good. Look at these failing box office numbers that's tracking bad. Something's wrong with Marvel. I guess Bob Iger agrees. Because according to him, his number one priority is turning Marvel around. His number one priority for the company is turning around the MCU. Let's get to this quote. Quality needs attention to deliver quality. It doesn't happen by accident, Iger said. And quantity, in our case, diluted quality. And Marvel has suffered greatly from that. I would say right now, my number one priority is to help the studio turn around creatively.
How is he going to do that?
Less stuff, right? We're not going to make as much stuff. We're going to focus on quality over quantity. The same thing he's been saying for the past year. But the idea that that's Bob Iger's number one priority is to turn Marvel around shows you how far it's fallen. And that everyone that was talking about its failure and got shut down by the media, they were right the entire time. And specifically, what he would go on to talk about when it comes to that was, you know, under Bob Chapek's tenure, they just greenlit so many Disney Plus shows, and they were just really overwhelmed by everything. Once again, like passing the blame to Bob Chapek, which is nuts to me. Go ahead.
It's what they do. Sorry, man. It's just what they do. It's like they can never look like the bad person. These people can never, ever take an L. I remember when you remember when that terrible show Santa Inc. came out from who made that show?
HBO.
When it was trashed in the reviews and like people were saying this is a terrible show, he literally tweeted, well, I guess I've upset white supremacists. Like these people cannot take an L to save their life. They have to name call and pass the blame. And then they got to like, you know, basically say, well, if you didn't like the show, you're probably a white supremacist. And that's who's like giving it bad reviews. You're just like, can one of these people ever come out and just say, yeah, well, we tried some things, it just didn't work. And we're going to go back to the old drawing board and maybe recapture some of that magic. They just don't seem to do that. It's always like, yeah, well, I know Disney sucks right now, but, you know, I wasn't in charge a few years ago. It's that guy's fault. It's crazy to me that they can't take responsibility for their own failure. He could have easily, I mean, he was in charge, right? He could have easily come in and just canceled half of these projects. Could he have not? Could he like literally said like, hey, I don't like the direction it's going. Like we want to get back to the writing and storytelling, not the message. So guys, we're going to like end this and redo this and redo that and all that stuff.
Batgirled some stuff 100%.
Exactly. But they chose not to. They chose like to push forward and see what happens. Now that it's not working, it's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. So don't blame me. I'm the good guy here.
Well, and even for the failure of the Marvels, he had somebody to pin the blame on, and that was COVID-19, by the way. Disney CEO blames MCU executives for the Marvels box office failure. So you'd think, oh man, he's really holding Kevin Feige accountable, you know, blaming Feige for the lack of leadership, lack of supervision. Well, no. Iger points out that the lack of executive supervision on set due to the COVID-19 pandemic during the filming of The Marvels was the primary reason for its underperformance. It's the end of 2023. It's almost 2024. And Bob Iger's blaming COVID-19 protocols for why there wasn't enough supervision for this dog shit movie. And that's why it's a failure.
He must have some kind of like card in front of him that's like things you can blame the failures of Disney on. Chapek, all right, I did that one already. All right, what's another one on this list? All right, blame COVID. Blame the mask mandates. That's why it stinks. We're really going to the bottom of the barrel here, aren't we, Bob?
I mean, something that like happened in 2020, right? Something that happened in 2020, we're still blaming that now.
Wasn't there movies that came out that powered through some of the mandates and lockdowns?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But apparently, you know, since those execs couldn't put a mask on and be there to supervise, or couldn't Skype call in, I don't know. That's what the fucking director did, right? For post-production, the director wasn't even there because she went and work on another project. So she did like Zoom calls and stuff. It's everything you could possibly imagine. It's always some fucking excuse.